Hello, hello, welcome. Jamie Troll here. I am a CPA, financial literacy coach, and profit strategist. My company is Balance CFO. I am live on my Balance CFO Facebook page right now, my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not in it, you need to come join it. We've got lots of great discussions happening over there. And I'm also live on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching me on YouTube, make sure that you press the subscribe button so that you know when I'm going live. And if you're watching me on Facebook, make sure you press in your feed right now. It probably says something like, make sure you know when Jamie Troll goes live. Go ahead and press that button so that it will always notify you when I go live. So today we're back to our weekly Q&As. We took last week off. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot of additional progress, unfortunately, being made last week, and I was at the beach, but I missed you guys. You can see I came back with 0 tan, so that's how I do the beach. But I did read a couple of books just for fun, which was kind of a new thing. So I came back refreshed and ready for all the news coming out. So today I'm gonna give you a little bit of an update as to where we are. Unfortunately, I don't have the update that I was hoping for, which was that a deal had been struck. But I will give you the update on what's being talked about, what are the holdups, what are we thinking right now, what could we see in a next bill? Are we definitely going to see a next bill? We're going to talk about all of that, and then I'll take your questions as well. So importantly, today is Friday, August the 7th. These things are changing. They haven't been changing as quickly lately, but I do foresee that this specific topic is going to continue to change and evolve over the coming days, maybe weeks. We'll have to kind of see how it goes. But just to kind of give, and hi guys, say hi when you're here. Give me a thumbs up or a heart so that I know that you are here. Hi. Okay, so here is what I want to kind of start with. Here, I'll just kind of back up a little bit. We have had, obviously the CARES Act was the big act that was passed, right, back in already the end of March at this point in time. The CARES Act had a lot in it. It was a really big bill, but it also has kind of already run its course, right? So the CARES Act, within it had some additional things for unemployment. It had stimulus checks as part of it. The CARES Act is what created the PPP loan. It's what added the EIDL advance, right? All of that came with the CARES Act. And I think that there was probably a little bit of a hope that this was a shorter term problem than what this is going to be. And I think everybody kind of has nodded their head at this point that this isn't just a quick injection that was needed for a couple of months, right? And even just the way they designed the PPP program, when you look at that, PPP program was meant to give you 2.5 months worth of payroll. It's almost laughable at this point, I feel like, for many businesses that are still struggling, which is a lot of businesses, and probably a lot of you guys listening here, that 2.5 months of payroll didn't get you a whole heck of a long way. What about all the other bills that you need to pay? What about the fact that now I can see there being an uptick? I think one of the worries that they have right now is that there's going to be an uptick again in jobless claims as PPP money runs out and business owners still don't have work for their employees to do. So that was a Band-Aid, but we were basically putting a Band-Aid on an artery, right? An artery bleed. So we need to do something else to kind of facilitate this because, again, people are running out of that PPP money at this point in time. A lot of people, that money is long gone, right? And they're still in the middle of all of this looking for help. So that is why Congress is really in talks right now about what is the second round going to be, right? Not just for PPP, but what is the second round of all of this stimulus going to be? People are still in a really tough spot economically, and this thing is probably going to drag on longer than any of us would like. So something has to be done, and I think that the majority of members of our government understand that fact and are working to do something. There's just some differences, as there always is, on what is best and what the right thing to do is. I honestly will say, y'all know I don't talk about politics, and I'm not going to. I'm going to say I'm glad I'm not in that room because this is not easy, right? And there are different priorities on different sides, and they're trying to come to an agreement. And that's the way our government works, right? That's the way this kind of two-party system works, where there's this give and take. But the problem is it just leaves kind of the rest of us just waiting, right? It just leaves us out of the process wondering what's going to happen. Now, you can always write your senators and your congressmen. If there's any specific part of any of these bills that strikes you as something that would be a huge, huge thing for you, write or call your representative or your senator's office. I definitely recommend that. I actually do think that while they may not listen to your specific call, they listen to volume. So, if you bombard them, they're gonna have to hear you at some point. So let's talk about, so right now they're kind of in these negotiation spots. They're pretty far apart. So Republicans had a $1 trillion bill. And I want to talk to you about what these bills are, because there's a lot of different bills. It's hard to keep our heads straight around them. So the starting point of these negotiations between the two parties was a $1 trillion with a T, dollar bill from the Republicans. That's called the HEALS Act. Now, it's actually not one bill. And this is what's something that can be really confusing about the HEALS Act. Like if you go try, and you can look up a lot of the text of these types of bills online and actually go read them. They're not the easiest thing to read in the entire world, but congress.gov is a great place to go if you wanted to look up and see what the bill actually says. But the HEALS Act, if you try to search the HEALS Act, you're not going to find it out there, because the HEALS Act is actually 8 different bills packaged together. So that's really what it is. It covers kind of 8 different broad topics, including unemployment, including PPP, including stimulus checks, and some other things. So that's really what the HEALS Act is. That's the Republican side. It's $1 trillion. On the Democrat side, a couple of months ago, they had come out with the HEROES Act, which is $3 trillion. So they're a little far apart in their starting points on this negotiation, right? And the HEROES Act, you actually can go look it up. It's on congress.gov, and you can see what it says out there. Covering a lot of the same topics, just clearly putting priority on certain things, which we have come to be accustomed to as a country, that our parties have different priorities. So you can see that in the bill, honestly. You can see, and I really do think we always this turns into very partisan. And I think a lot of people get really frustrated, and I fully understand that. But I do think everybody's trying to do what they think will help. Because, but they're looking at it through different lenses. So that's how I have to look at it, that everybody is trying to help. Nobody's just trying to destroy the economy or destroy any, I just think there are different lenses that people are looking at this through as far as what needs to happen here. And my hope is, because neither of them is probably right on either side, right? My hope is that somehow they come together and can figure out what the best solution is together. So that's what they're working on. We thought maybe by this Friday, they'd kind of put a line in the sand for this Friday. They are talking right now. I think they started at 1:30 Eastern time. They were going to have another meeting today. They had a meeting last night. It's not impossible that they come to some kind of deal. A lot of times, it was interesting because earlier in the week, they thought, okay, we're probably going to come to a deal. And then last night, it's kind of seemingly falling apart. But sometimes they say that as a point of leverage. So you got to understand that it's hard to understand when you're looking at it from the outside in where they really are, because no one else is in this room, right? This is 4 people basically in a room making these decisions. And we don't actually know how far anybody is apart, because they use these conversations for leverage. So it's really hard, even when they ask, do you think you're going to come to a deal? It's hard to know, what's real. So we could have a deal today. I think it's pretty unlikely, but we could have a deal today. We could have a deal next week. We could not have a deal until September, even if then, right? I mean, there are so many different potential things that could play out here. Now, hopefully there's an understanding on most of these, on most people's part about how urgent this is and how many businesses and people are still hurting. And the fact that an economic cliff is not something we really want to go over, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's sort of the mode that we're in right now. So the HEALS Act is, again, the Republican Act, $1 trillion. The HEROES Act is the Democratic starting point, $3 trillion. You would think you could do, like, I don't know, any moms out there are like, well, obviously the answer is just $2 million. Just figure it out. Like, that's, I mean, my 4-year-old would be like, well, let's compromise at 2. But I don't think that's how this thing really plays out in the real world. We'll have to see. So there's also a couple other acts. So that's not even all of it. There's a couple other things I want you to be aware of that are sort of outside the periphery that are important. So firstly, let's talk about EIDL, because I know a lot of you guys are interested in that. There's the EIDL what's it called? EIDL for Small Business Act, which is out there as well. It puts more money into EIDL, both loans and advances. And one of the things, and I've seen some talk about this in my group, one of the things that it would do would be to, in some way, we don't know exactly how this would be affected, but instead of doing the $1,000 per employee, it would give the full $10,000 to all people who got that EIDL advance. So if you qualified and got an EIDL advance that was $1K per employee, if it was less than $10,000, this bill, if enacted, if passed, would give you that full $10,000. Now, we don't know if it would be, they could do that in a couple of different ways. If it were to pass, and right now, again, it's really up in the air as to what the support is there. That one seems a little one-sided, but there is a little bit of Republican support, but it's mostly Democratically supported. So we'll have to see. But ultimately, that one, you would either just automatically get the money. It's possible, right? That they could say, okay, well, you got $2,000, should have gotten 10, here's your $8,000. And it would show up one day. Again, we would know that the bill was passed. At least it wouldn't just show up tomorrow, unfortunately. Or they could do it in the way that if you took out the EIDL loan, the first X amount would, like, so if you only got a $2,000 advance and you got a $20,000 loan, well, you'd have another $8,000 of your loan that would end up being forgiven. Now, a lot of you guys probably have the question that comes next on this, which is, well, wait a second, but I got the PPP too. So does this really matter to me, right? Does it really matter? Because my PPP forgiveness is going to be reduced by my EIDL advance anyway, right? So if you got a $50,000 PPP loan and a $2,000 EIDL advance, you can only be forgiven for $48,000 worth of your PPP loan. They're going to subtract that off of your forgiveness. So you would be right? Like that this may, if you got a PPP, getting more money from your EIDL advance may not be all that great for you, although it would be a low interest loan, if nothing else, right? So that's kind of where we stand on the EIDL piece. We'll see if that makes it into the final bill. We just don't know, or if they pass something standalone. Again, right now, it's really unclear. That one, I think, is probably, again, if that's something really important to you and make a huge difference to you, go write your senators and your congressmen, because I don't think that one has been as prioritized as some of these other things. So go ahead, if that would be like all you would need, right? Then go and hit up, you can go to, there are some sites out there where you can easily find who your representatives are and your congressmen, and you can just write them an email or call them and let your voice be heard, because I think that's a really important thing to be doing right now. So that's the EIDL. PPP, as part of what was in the HEALS Act, they did have PPP forgiveness included within there, meaning PPP blanket forgiveness for anything under $150,000. So if your loan itself, now if you got $155,000 of a loan, unfortunately, you're out of luck. But if you got a loan that was $150,000 or under for PPP, which most of you probably did, then this bill, if passed in the way it's written right now, would allow for blanket forgiveness, meaning you still would likely have to certify, either I used this in the way I was supposed to, or I made my best efforts to use this in the way that it was supposed to. We'll have to see kind of how that certification wording would work. They haven't announced, there's no example anywhere of what that would be. And in that case, if you submitted that, you would get your loan automatically forgiven. A big question mark that I have on that is, well, what does that mean if you got the EIDL advance? Does that somehow, and I still think there's potential. I mean, more than likely it's going to stay how it is, but I just think the administrative difficulties of subtracting that EIDL advance, especially if you do blanket PPP forgiveness, might end up being more trouble than it's worth for them, and they might end up waiving that. I don't know. That's just a thought process I have, is how, okay, if we blanket forgive all of these, but then we have to settle up and have people pay back these EIDL advances, that's going to be a pretty complicated process. But I don't even think they're really thinking about that now, to be honest. I don't even think that's in their mind, how to handle these advances at this point. So we'll just have to kind of, again, I'm going to say this probably 1,000 times during this live, which is wait and see what happens. The other thing I want to tell you guys about, so there's so many things. Oh my gosh, there's so many things today that I want to talk about with you guys, but I want to make you known about an act that I actually just started reading. It's been around for a little while. Again, it's a bill. It's not an actual act. It's been around for a little while, but it hadn't gotten a lot of traction until recently. So this is called the Restart Act. Again, it's a bill. It has a lot of bipartisan support, though. I mean, like a lot. So this may end up being part of whatever we see in the final bills and final act. And what the Restart Act, if you ever wanted to look it up, you can just go look up Restart Act. I think it's Bill 3814 on Senate Congress.gov. You can go look up what it says. That one's actually, it's not that long. So it can get a little bit complicated, but the main part of the Restart Act is it creates a totally new loan program. Like, we need more, right? We've already got PPP, we've got EIDL. This would be a brand new type of loan that would be partially forgivable. You couldn't get it fully forgiven, but you could get it partially forgiven if used correctly, and would be available to pay a broader variety of things. So it wouldn't be a payroll loan. It would be a bigger loan, and the intention would really be to be able to pay fixed operating costs. So for those of you who are like, that's great that I got money to pay my employees, but what am I going to do with this rent, right? Or you have high fixed operating costs that you just have not been able to cover, this loan would be great. And again, it would be a loan, but a portion of it would be forgivable. And again, that's from the Restart Act. We don't know if that will end up in the final bill, but if I were a betting woman, I think that is the loan that they would put in there. And so, we'll have to wait and see what they end up doing. But I'll probably do some more content just on the Restart Act, maybe next week if these talks continue, because I think that this one could be really interesting. The big problem I have with it is it's yet another plan that is yet another loan, and trying to figure out how all of these interplay, right? Because you've got unemployment, you've got EIDL, you've got PPP. A lot of you guys have any number of combinations of those things. And now you're going to add one more thing into it to say, okay, how do I use this with that? So, and can I? And we don't know. So this is a great question, Nancy. Would people have the EIDL be eligible for the Restart Act? We don't know, probably so. My wondering is if you would be able to refinance your EIDL into a Restart Act loan. I don't know if that's true. That would make sense, right? Because you say, well, I took this money for my operating costs already. Obviously, I'd rather have a portion of it forgiven than have to pay it back. So maybe they would have an option where you could actually refinance your EIDL into a Restart Act loan. I think right now in the Restart Act, it says 7 years is the maximum. So it would be a shorter term than EIDL, but again, a portion of it would be forgiven. And that portion would be dependent upon how much your gross receipts had fallen. So it's kind of an equation based on essentially let's say in this case, there's a couple different ways you can calculate it, but 2019 gross receipts versus 2020 gross receipts, or maybe the first 6 months versus the first 6 months. If you're down like 75% or 50%, right, then that's going to determine the more down your gross receipts are, the more you can be forgiven for. So it's kind of trying to make up the difference, right, between that. And that makes more sense than PPP, I think, too, because the problem with PPP is Some businesses, it was 150% necessary. And some businesses took it because they could get it, right? Because there wasn't really a whole lot you had to do to support it. This loan, you would have to do more to be able to support. I think the way it's written right now, you have to have at least a 25% drop in your gross receipts to even be able to qualify to get the loan. And then the amount of forgiveness you could get would be based off of how much your gross receipts were down, multiplied. There's a whole equation that goes along with it. But again, the more your gross receipts were down, the more that would be forgiven, trying to make up that difference, right? So this would kind of be, it's a working capital loan is what it's called. But maybe there would be an option to refinance those EIDLs. That's what I would recommend if I were writing it. I'm not. So, and I'm glad I'm not. So more to come on that, but I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Again, with PPP expires today, guys. Like alarm bells. If you haven't gotten, I'll call it round one. It's really kind of round two, but if you haven't gotten a PPP loan yet, okay, and you've thought about it, and maybe you're an independent contractor, maybe you're self-employed, maybe you have some employees, whatever it is, and you haven't gotten one yet, maybe you were trying to time it out with how unemployment benefits were working, go apply, okay? Blue Vine, I think, is still taking them. Lendio is still taking them. Cross River, I think, is still taking them. We got a couple hours here, and maybe they'll extend it again, but there's also a possibility that they take those funds and repurpose them after today. And I'll tell you in a minute why I think that might be the way they will potentially go, but we'll see. Again, in the HEALS Act, getting these confused. In the HEALS Act, which is pretty much the starting point for these negotiations, they also have in there allowing people to get a second PPP loan, potentially. Now, what I don't know is, will they allow people to get a second PPP loan and have this working capital loan from the Restart Act, or will they replace PPP with the Restart Act? It could be one or the other. It could be both. So we don't know exactly how that is going to happen. Okay, so somebody said you received two. I'm assuming you're talking about PPP. You cannot have more than one unless you have more than one separate business. If you got two, you have got to return one, or else that is fraud. Do not take more than one PPP loan. Contact your bank, get that thing back as quickly as you can, because believe me, they will be looking for people that got multiple. A lot of people accidentally got multiple ones because there's just not very good controls over any of this process, which as an ex-auditor, just like, it horrifies me how terrible all of the processes and controls are for this whole thing. And we're talking about billions and trillions of dollars. It's like mind blowing. But if you got that, you need to give it back. Okay, let's see. So what other questions do we have? You're an LLC sole member trucking company. You got both PPP and EIDL. Got PPP to pay myself and EIDL to pay my drivers that work as independent contractors with 1099s. So yes, exactly. So if you work with independent contractors, you can't pay independent contractors with PPP and have it be forgiven because independent contractors can get their own PPP, but you can pay them with EIDL. Yes, you can. And in this, just FYI, if this Restart working capital loan did pass, you would be able to use that for independent contractors. That is one of the things. So yes, the deadline is tomorrow. Technically, I think it's the 8th. Tomorrow's a Saturday though, y'all. Like, I don't know of any banks that will likely be lending tomorrow. So I'm telling everybody, if you think you want it, today is probably the last day for you to get an application in. There may be a handful that still will take an application tomorrow. I would not chance it. I would go ahead and get it in. That's why I'm basically saying that for all intents and purposes, the deadline is today. Let's see. So let me know what other questions you had. I'll think of a couple other updates. Unemployment benefits. That is another really, really big one that is being debated. Unemployment benefits are they're relatively far apart in what they want to do. So the HEALS Act from the Republicans wants to give $200 extra. So right now we know, let's take it back. The extra FPUC, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, that was the extra $600 that you got if you were self-employed, or if you got regular unemployment, you got an extra $600 from the federal government every single week through the end of July. That is donezo, gone away. So now that's kind of the cliff that they created. And that's part of the urgency that is behind this, because there could be, the concern is there's still 13, I can't even, I don't even want to quote jobless claims right now. There are a significant amount of people who are jobless right now. And if they don't give any additional, there could be a huge economic impact to that. And I know that this has been a very divisive issue, and I see all sides of it, you guys. Like it is tough, because it is a very, very tough thing to figure out the right thing to do. But if you do have these jobless claims, right, and really people aren't unable to get work and they don't have money, all of a sudden our economy and our spending as a country is going to like tank. So that's the concern, is that we created this cliff of a crisis, basically. Also running up at the end of August is the moratorium on evictions. So there's a lot of things happening at once that could be really impactful to the economy as a whole if something is not done. And I think both sides understand that, and that's what they're working towards. So unemployment, basically, Republicans say $200 up to a max of 70% of your old pay, which is really hard to implement, by the way. I think that's one of the things that they've had trouble with, is implementing a percentage cap, or even just a cap saying you can't earn more than you used to. And that's been one of the tough things about this whole thing, is that people can earn more on unemployment in some cases. But it's a hard thing to technically fix, because the states and the way their systems are set up, I think we've all seen that the states have very antiquated systems that are not set up for all of this right now. So that's one of the things. Democrats, their heroes bill continued the $600 through the end of December. More than likely, I think they're going to come to a compromise on that. If I were a betting woman, they're going to end up with $300, $400, somewhere in that range, maybe phasing to a percentage at some point in time if the states can do it. I think that's where we're going to end up. I honestly think that they are starting to come together a little bit, and that's not as much of a sticking point as it was maybe even a week ago. So we'll have to wait and see. How many times, if y'all would play a drinking game on how many times I say wait and see during this live, it would be a lot. Hashtag wait and see. Okay. So let's see, what else do we have here? So Suzanne, and I don't know if I'm getting all your comments, because I'm not seeing that many comments, but there's a ton of people on the live. So if anybody's putting in comments and I'm not seeing them, I think the program I'm using is not showing me all of your comments from all different sources. Okay, Suzanne says, I'm an LLC sole proprietor, been on PUA, which was $600, higher than my PPP. Any clarity on if PPP needs to be used in 10 consecutive weeks? Like likelihood of retro pay on new, okay. I have separate, so this is kind of the question of like the month or more than that, is how to handle PPP and PUA. And the trouble with this is PPP gives no guidelines. The only thing, if you look in the PPP guidelines, it says getting PPP may impact your ability to draw on unemployment. That's all it says. Nothing else. The intention of the program, and the way that it's always been talked about, is that the intention is to get people off of unemployment, and that would include business owners and those who are taking it. That's the intention. But in the way that it's written, there's no cohesive, like it does, being on unemployment does not impact your ability to get PPP forgiveness. So that's the thing. People think it's a PPP rule. It's not a PPP rule. It has nothing to do with PPP. You get PPP regardless. However, PPP can impact your ability to get unemployment. And unemployment is facilitated through your state using your state's guidelines. Okay, so that's the big problem. And some states have come out and they've taken a position on PPP. Like some states, for example, have said, no, when you get PPP, when you receive it, the day that you receive it, that is when your clock starts. You have to use it over the intended time you're going to pay yourself with it. What that generally would mean to me is, even though you have 24 weeks, assuming you're going to choose the 24 weeks, which I think most people will, even though you have 24 weeks to use PPP, right? It's only roughly 10 weeks of pay. It's 2.5 months worth of pay. That's what your PPP loan is based off of. That's how it's calculated. So it doesn't really make sense to take that and spread it over 24 weeks. I think most of the states that I've seen mandating have said, no, you have to claim it when you get it, and you claim it in general over that 10 weeks because it's 10 weeks of pay. So you would claim an equal amount over 10 weeks against, and when I say claim it, I mean, it's probably not good wording. It's my accountant wording. You would include it when you're doing your certifications for unemployment and ask you if you earned any money. Okay, there's a lot of debate over this between accountants too, and whether it should impact unemployment or it shouldn't. But I have to push everybody back to their state to say each state's going to have their own position here. And I think most states are in the camp of, yes, you have to claim it. Some states, though, they give you zero guidance. And I've even heard of some people being told that they don't have to put it on their unemployment. But it really runs the gamut. Okay. And then again, there was a question around, can I wait? Can I delay it since I have a whole 24 weeks? Can I start my 10 weeks later on? Again, it is really state dependent. And sometimes it's even dependent on who you get on the phone. If you call them, it's a cluster. It's a cluster. There's no answer because there's no cohesive answer to the question, right? Because it's run through 50 different states who honestly, a lot of times don't even really understand how it works, especially if you're a sole proprietor LLC, right? Like how all of that's going to work. It makes more sense when you're an S-Corp or a C-Corp because you take a paycheck. But I just think there's this lack of understanding in all of this regulation of how LLCs, self-employed people, independent contractors actually pay themselves, that they don't have rules around then what you have to claim. So the best advice I've always given is scour all the, a lot of times there are tutorials out there about on, your how to do your certification, how to fill it out. Scour anything that's on your state website, any FAQs, give them a call. Godspeed. Do what you can, put in the effort that you can to see if there's a position. And if not, take a reasonable position, which again, I would say a reasonable position is claiming it over a 10-week time period, the amount that you're going to pay yourself. And you can kind of determine when you start that. But again, do the due diligence to see if your state has has a system. Yes, it is it's just cluster after cluster after cluster. And then we figure out one of the clusters and then they add, more to just make it even more of a cluster. Okay. Sole prop that was on PUA, the 600 just ended, starting to pay myself with PPP. If they reinstate the 600, can we pause? So I wouldn't. And again, all of this comes back to your independent risk tolerance. And I say that and people are like, what does that mean? But any CPA, when there is not set in stone guidance on things, right? You will have some CPAs that are really, I don't even know what, aggressive. Maybe aggressive is the word, where they will advise clients to do all kinds of things. Again, you have to be aware of what your own client's risk tolerance is, though. There are some more conservative CPAs that will not do that will tell you to take the more conservative route, right? Remember, these are new programs. We have no idea how this is all going to play out over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years, as they come look back into all of this, right? You best believe they're going to try to get back. Like right now it's a cluster, so you can kind of get away with stuff, right? Meaning like, yeah, no one's going to stop you probably from claiming PUA and getting PPP at the exact same time or pausing your PPP. But if they come back later right? Do you have a defensible position? Do you have a defensible position? And again, I think the substance and the form of it, right, is PUA is not meant to kind of be like week to week. It's you're unemployed or you're not, right? And so some states even have like how many days did you work, right? Like there are different requirements around actually being able to claim unemployment. In some states, they reinstated the need to be looking for work even as a self-employed person. So make sure you're aware of what the rules are and whether you really are eligible for it. And then pick which is the best. Like, I just think, I know everybody wants to maximize out what they get, and I understand that. But again, think about your own risk tolerance, right? Now, they probably aren't going to cart you to jail for this, but could they come back and say, you got to give us your unemployment money back because you weren't supposed to get that? Yeah, they definitely could. And drop some interest and penalties on you too. Definitely could. And I think that's going to be something, there's going to be a reckoning from all of this, where states are going to go back and try to claw back some money because they need to, right? These states are out of money. The federal government's going to be looking, they're mainly going to be looking for fraud. So again, I wouldn't like lose sleep over it if you're trying to do the right thing. But just don't get too cute, I guess is my advice. And if you do get too cute, get with make sure you're working independently with a CPA that you're paying, who can help you in the case that they come back. Okay. Yes, you can. You can finish your PPP and go back on PUA. Depending on your state, you may have to reapply. So yeah. And I agree. I would use PPP and PUA to pay yourself, assuming you qualify for both, than to use EIDL to pay yourself. Y'all know I don't really like the idea of paying yourself with EIDL. It's a loan. You got to pay it back. Use it in your business to make actual money. Don't pay yourself with it. Okay. S-Corp, we got the first round of PPP to compensate for his drop in work. We're now both okay, but work will drop in Q4. Can we apply for this PPP again? So right now, there's no other PPP to apply for. The second, I hate saying it's so hard. Like the rounds are getting confusing. If you were to be able to get a second PPP, if they passed an act soon where they said, yes, you can get a second PPP, even though you've already had one, there likely will be restrictions on it. So as of right now, the way that it is written is that if you get, I think you have to have a drop of at least 50% of gross receipts between looking at either Q1 of 2020 versus Q1 of 2019 or Q2 of 2020 versus Q2 of 2019. If you've dropped by 50% of gross receipts, meaning revenue you brought in during those time periods, then you could qualify for a second PPP. There are going to, if they do pass, if they put this into the final bill, you would have to show more harm than you did the first time when you didn't have to prove any harm, right? So there will be more proof you will have to come up with as a business owner. You will have to give those records. You will have to have good records to be able to support what you're asking for. So likely, it just depends on what your numbers are as to whether you'd be able to get another one. So most of, and I will say that it does look like most of the support there, even if they did it, the new working capital loans from the Restart Act, or if they let you get a second round of PPP, almost all of them have stipulations now that you have to have been, you have to prove how you were impacted. And that's usually by gross receipts versus gross receipts from the prior year. So the days of, kind of just being able to certify, yes, I need this, are probably gone. You're going to have to do more. So that's something that you can be doing right now in the interim, waiting on what's going to happen, is make sure you have good records. Do you have good records? Do you know what your profit was for Q1 and Q2 of this year? So that if you needed it to, and same thing for 2019, do you have those comparable records? If you don't, go ahead and get them ready and see where you stand to see if you might be able to be eligible for any of these new things that would be coming down the line. Okay, so real quick, I want to add a couple of things here that I think are important. What happens if there's not a deal? Because there's probably not going to be a deal today. Who knows? I mean, maybe they'll surprise us. Again, nothing will be passed right away. Like the deal, the steps are, deal comes first. This is a deal between senators. Then they would vote, after that, Senate would vote. Then after that, House would vote. Then after that, President would sign. Hopefully all of that would come in fairly quick succession, but it's going to take probably at least a week for that entire process to play out. They are not, I think they're not adjourning. It was supposed to be like the Senate's going to adjourn today, go for recess. They're not, although they are allowing members, I believe, to travel home and be in session from home, which doesn't sound very effective to me. But so they will continue to work on this over the coming weeks, but they haven't said for sure that they wouldn't. If they come up and say, you know what, there's no way we're getting a deal, they're gonna go out of session. I don't think that would be looked kindly on at anybody if that happened. But y'all know what I'm gonna say. We'll have to wait and see. But if there are a couple of things that if it doesn't go through, the president may do an executive action of sorts. What would be included in that? Probably something for either unemployment, which would be closer to probably what the Republicans are proposing, a smaller amount to bridge unemployment, or the president is really in favor of a payroll tax cut. So cutting payroll taxes for employees. So that might be where he would go with that. And if that happens, he would have to repurpose money that was already likely set aside for something else, which is why I think it wouldn't be impossible for PPP to be done with, to actually not get re-upped, because they may take that money and repurpose it to an executive order of some kind. He also would probably have something on the moratorium, extending the moratorium on evictions, which I do think would be good. That does need to happen, because I think August 24th, something like that, is when that moratorium runs out. We already ran out. People can now be assessed penalties and things like that on unpaid rents as of last month. That ran out. So there are some things that need to be done. So if nothing passes, if they don't get a bill together, there could be some executive action that would affect some of these areas, but it wouldn't be anything broad, and it would probably be just a Band-Aid until, a broader package could hopefully be passed at some point in time. So, it's yet to be seen. Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is, Nick, this is what we do, though. I mean, this is, and I get the frustration, but I also have to say, like, our system, while exceedingly flawed, right, requires a level of compromise. And this is how that happens. For the bad or the good, people with, who are elected, who are representing different people and different, priorities, come together and try to find a happy medium. That call it politics, but it's how things happen. And it's hard. It's hard to be on the other side of this. I think importantly, and I've said this whole time, right? We can't count on anything. And that's an unfortunate thing to be able to say, but like, I don't want anybody counting on those unemployment benefits. I don't want anybody counting on another round of loans. We all need to be managing our business and our money in general as if there's no, lifeboat coming. We have to be doing that, because we have to be diligent. We have to be saving. We have to be, really being honest with ourselves about expenses. We have to be really thinking about ways to pivot our business or to get creative about bringing in revenues. We cannot rely. It is a bad idea to try to rely on any government to pull us out of this. Hopefully they will help. Hopefully. But there are things we can be doing in the interim to help ourselves, right? I really and truly believe that. And so, that's something that I'm committed to as well, because I want to give you guys resources and things that I think will be helpful to help you just with your business in general, not just waiting for, that life raft of federal funding that may or may not come, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. So let me go back to your questions real quick, and I'll be keeping you guys updated. I'll be back. I'll be here as much as I need to next week. As things change, I might add some lives or something like that, depending, or make some extra YouTube videos. So again, if you're watching me on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, or even if you're not watching me on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube, because I'm going to be doing some more videos to keep you guys updated on all of this as it progresses, because it is. Watch, we're going to get off this live, and all of a sudden I'm going to have a flood of new news coming. That's what tends to happen. All right. Irma, let's see. No worries. I love questions. Let's see. Started using PPP. Do I just stop filing PUA totally, or do you just report the amount that you got? Yeah. So you can do either, but depending on how big your PPP is, you may be able to get both. So PPP will potentially likely reduce your unemployment. But let's say your PPP is pretty small and you only get $200 a month, and your state allows $500 in other earnings. Like, some states are much lower than that. But let's say in that case, that would then, it would reduce your unemployment, but not down to zero, right? And so you'd still be eligible for some unemployment benefits. It might, if it's too much, it would put you over the threshold, but it will serve the ability of keeping your claim active. So that can be a good thing. So it's up to you what you want to do, whether you want to do that or you just want to go off of it. If you think you're not going to need it again, then it might be better to just go off of it. If you think you could, then you might as well keep your claim active and report your PPP on it. Okay, let me go through what else. My PPP was deposited into a separate bank account for my normal checking. What's the best way to show paper trail for self-employed and business expenses so the loan is 100% forgiven? Okay, so firstly, I have a video. You're watching me, Linda, on YouTube. I do have a YouTube video. It's called, I think, something like Self-Employed 100% Forgiveness. It's from maybe about a month ago, maybe a little more. And I did a video where I talked about this. I think actually the best thing to do is pay yourself entirely with your money. Don't use it for business expenses if you are self-employed or a sole proprietor, because tax-wise, it's going to be better for you to keep those other deductions and to use the entire thing to pay yourself, which you should be able to do if you got the full amount of the loan. As far as backup for how to do that, I have a whole diatribe on this too. I think I talk about it in that YouTube video as well. So as a sole proprietor LLC, you should not have to prove that you paid yourself. It should be just a calculation based on your Schedule C from 2019 as to how much you can be forgiven. However, there will be banks that will want to see proof of you paying yourself. So I do recommend that what you do is you pay yourself. If you're not taking PUA, you can pay yourself all at once. You can pay yourself the whole dang thing at one time and just write, set 10 weeks of salary and the dates, maybe, or something like that. Salary replacement, whatever you want to write on the memo, and write a check to yourself or do a bank transfer with that in the memo. Whatever you want to do, just to show transfer from preferably a business account to a personal account. I do think that's best. Some people got the PPP put into their personal account, which I think has some challenges with how do you show paying yourself when it's already in your personal account. So in those cases, what I'm telling people is, hey, you probably should have a business account anyway. Might as well go get one, transfer it in there, and then transfer it out. So if you don't have a business account, I recommend aslo.com. It's what I use. It is fully online, but it's super easy to set up. You need hardly anything. It takes like 10 minutes. It's super easy. So Aslo, AZLO.com if you don't have one. And then you can transfer the money in and then transfer it back out again, which is the silliest thing in the entire world. And also why I think it's stupid that they would make you prove that, but they probably will. So, okay. Let's see. S-Corp that takes a paycheck that got PPP while already getting PUA. Does that make it different as to when you can use it? So PPP, to get forgiven for PPP, Dawn, you have to actually pay yourself with the money through W-2 wages as an S-Corp. So you have to pay yourself those PPP wages. When you get those wages, obviously, for those weeks that you're paying yourself for, those 10 weeks that you're paying yourself for, you would have to report that on your PUA. So it's actually more straightforward, more obvious, because you're actually paying yourself for those 10 weeks. And I think you can pick whichever weeks that you want to. If you're an S-Corp, I would expect that you could, right? And that's what you would claim. Let's see. See if I missed any. All right, I'll take two more. What kind of records do we need to submit for that? Mine is an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know what this was asking about. I don't know if this is for PPP. If you're talking about PPP, there's a PPP forgiveness application. Again, if blanket forgiveness happens, then you don't have to worry as much about it. If your loan's under 150K, go to balancecfo.com/PPP tracker. If you don't have the tracker, we spent way too much time making that. Myself and two of my good friends who are also CPAs, Bree and Kelly, spent a lot of time on it. It is a really good tracker for that. Otherwise, if you're talking about, you might be talking about showing, like getting another PPP. Is that what you mean? Where you're showing your gross receipts have declined? To show that, you're probably going to have to show, I would assume, a P&L for each of those quarters. So I think that's really what it would be. Could probably be a P&L can be in an Excel spreadsheet, but you would need to show income and expenses similar to what you would show on your tax return for your business, but by quarter. So not every business has that. It's not going to be as easy. Now, when you're doing 2019 in total, that's easy. You just give them your tax return, but otherwise you're going to have to chop it up by quarter. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. All right. Let me know. I'm missing some questions in here. I can't see all of them. I took unemployment for the first time. My salon was closed. My accountant told me to take the PPP when I was back to work to play catch up. Yeah. So that's a good way to do it. I mean, I do think that's a really good way to do it, is to take unemployment until you're starting to ramp back up at work and wouldn't really be eligible for unemployment anyway, and then start taking pay on your PPP. It's okay to earn money while you're also taking money on PPP. It does not impact your forgiveness. It's not like unemployment where you can't be earning any money and get it. So that was one of the kind of common things that people thought. Okay. If you filed 2019 taxes, can you apply for PPP? Yes, you can. I would do it today because it's potentially about to go away. So I would go ahead and do that. I don't know if you mean, you might be meaning forgiveness. I don't know. A lot of banks aren't taking forgiveness applications yet, but they will be probably soon once they have a little bit more word from Congress. I could just hold the PPP until I say September and then start paying myself an employee. It's that easy. I have been waiting because I can't remember which comment before was yours, Dawn. If you're not on unemployment, so it's more complicated than that when you have employees. So when it's just you have a little bit more flex. When it's employees, there are some complicated rules around FTEs and average FTEs over the time period, over the covered period that you have the loan. So if you waited to pay anybody until later on with your PPP, if you had an employee and you didn't start paying them right away, that will obviously decrease your average FTE. And you compare that to kind of pre-COVID. It's a whole complicated mess. Again, balancecfo.com/PPP tracker is going to be your best bet for putting your scenario in and seeing what happens, because there's a whole rule around safe harbor as well that makes it less important. And you know what happens during your 8 or 24 week period with your FTEs, but it gets a little complicated when you have employees. I'll say that. I don't want to I have other videos on that. Again, go to my YouTube channel, go look at my video on Safe Harbor that I did that could be helpful, all of that. Okay. Let's see. Some state grants, you might actually, so you may have to report that to EIDL if you're receiving grants, because it can impact the amount of EIDL that you would be eligible for. I don't believe it has an impact on PPP, but check your, always check your documents to see what it says. Let's see. LLC received PPP into personal bank account, has been taking draws to equal his salary, no business bank account. How is he taking draws? Right? Because usually a draw would be taking money out and putting it somewhere else. That's typically what a draw is, taking money out of a business account, putting it into a personal account. Or even, I mean, if you had two different accounts, but how is he taking a draw if he only has one bank account? Like cash, like going to the ATM and taking out cash? I think the best thing for proof is transfer between bank accounts for paying yourself. Okay. Let's see. Can we use PPP money to pay for employees' payroll that were not laid off? Yeah, of course. Yeah, you don't have to have laid off your employees. It's eligible to any employees that you have. Yes, you can. Approved and received the EIDL loan. The tier 2 officer told me that I was going to receive the grant, but I never did. Call. There is an SBA disaster line. You can give them a call. Just Google SBA disaster phone line. Call them. There's also an email address. You can do both. You can email them as well and see. It may have been an issue with your bank account and the numbers they had in your bank account. Now, if you got PPP, it's probably less important because they're going to subtract the advance off your PPP forgiveness anyway. But if you didn't, then I would call and try to get that advance. Let's see. So you received it into your business account and wants to transfer money from PayPal to your personal account. Yeah, that should be fine. I mean, again, I think it's silly that they make you do anything at all. I think it's quite silly that they actually show you, that they actually make you prove payment to yourself as a sole proprietor in LLC, because it's also not how you're taxed. Okay, if my 2019 sole LLC filing as an S-Corp only shows draws for my business in the person, no, womp womp, no. So you are only eligible as an S-Corp or a C-Corp if you have taken W-2 wages. Really important, though, to take W-2 wages, like super duper important to take W-2 wages as an S-Corp. You are actually required to. It's a huge audit red flag if you are an S-Corp, especially if you're a profitable S-Corp and you are not taking anything in the form of wages and you're only taking distributions. Why is that a red flag? Because that's the way people get around paying payroll taxes. So people have been very upset about this, very upset. They're like, I'm an S-Corp. I take all my, or most of my earnings in basically dividends and draws and not in payroll, right? And they're like, why can't I get this? Well, the loan is for payroll, right? It's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Payroll is money you pay payroll taxes on. You don't pay payroll taxes on your draws. That's the benefit of being an S-Corp, is that money comes out that you pull out of your business as a draw instead of as payroll to you. You're saving 15+% because you aren't paying payroll taxes, because you're saying it's not payroll and that it's more passive type income, right? It's not compensation for working in the business. Your compensation for working in your business is supposed to be paid via W-2 wages. I do have a course. I got to say it because I have a whole bonus module on S-Corps. So I got to put it out there for you. I'll put it in the comments down on YouTube too, but it's balancecfo.com/basics. So I want you to go check it out because it's a very affordable course and it goes through all the basics of finance, accounting, taxes. And I have a lot of information about there on entity types, picking the right entity type, and a whole bonus module that I did just on S-Corps with a whole checklist for when you are an S-Corp and things you need to be doing, because there are a lot of things. And we found through this whole process with COVID that a lot of S-Corps weren't doing what they need to do. So go check it out, balancecfo.com/basics. I think it'd be perfect for you. I've got lots and lots of people doing it that have really enjoyed it and gotten a ton out of it. Okay, sorry, that was an aside. I'll take one more question. Let's see. Last question. Similar to Ramona, I'm a sole proprietor. When PUA ended, I started paying myself via PPP. When I originally spoke with my CPA, I was told to pay this over 8 weeks. This was her question as well. Is the 8 weeks okay? Yes. So it changed. It changed. You can. Here's the thing, though. If you're a sole proprietor, to be able to take it over 8 weeks, you can only get 8 weeks worth of pay. And your whole loan, if you got the right amount, is really more. It's 2.5 months. So if you take it over 8 weeks, if you pick your 8 weeks and that's going to be your covered period, you will not be forgiven for your entire loan, which is why I tell most sole proprietors to pick the 24 weeks. Go watch my video on this on YouTube. Go to my Jamie, just search for my channel, Jamie Troll, and there's a video for self-employed people, how they can get 100% forgiveness. You want to pick the 24-week period. And in that case, you had to have to pay yourself over 10 weeks. So the 8 weeks was kind of the old rules. And then they passed the new rules, which I really recommend all sole proprietors actually go and check those out and use the 24 weeks. Yay. Thanks, Elisa. Oh, I got a couple. Oh, yay. Thanks. I'm glad. I got a couple of people who have been in the course. Yay. Thanks, guys. I'm glad you like it. Again, balancecfo.com/basics. I really put that together, honestly, because of all the stuff going on with COVID and how many people realized, like, hey, I need to get my finances under control. There are things that I didn't know that I didn't know. And I'm glad to have been able to help. Okay, I said one more question, but I'm going to, okay. Best place to apply for PPP today. Try Lendio, Lendio. Try, I think Cabbage closed, Blue Vine or Cross River, or there is one more. Can't remember the fourth. Those I think are open. If Square Capital I think is also open. So check that out. You find the course. Hang on, I'm going to post a comment. I don't know if it'll post it everywhere. Let me see if it will. So it's go to cfo.com/basics. Let me see if you can see this. I'm putting it up and then I'll put my own comment up. Look at this. How fun. So that is where you would go to find out about the course. I'll post it around so that you guys can find it as well. But I have one extra bonus actually that's expiring really soon. It's a Q&A. It's a group Q&A with me where you can ask me questions about the course and any questions you have from going through it. And that's coming up soon. So you want to jump in if you're going to jump into the course so you can be a part of that. Okay, guys, you guys are awesome. I love y'all. I will be back again. I might do some extra bonus lives or YouTube videos next week. So make sure you're paying attention as things kind of evolve and things change. I want to make sure you know and you're aware and up to date on all the things, because you never know. Maybe everything will change overnight. Let's hope not. You guys, I'm tired. They need to stop changing stuff. All right. I love y'all and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye, guys.